Hello, everyone on YouTube. Before to watch my story, I want to ask you from where country and what time is it now there you watch me, and you leave a comment. And anyone, it's welcome to share place where they live. Don't forget to subscribe my channel and put like. Thank you.
This has been less of a hobby and more of an obsession of mine for over 2 decades, and I thought that it might be cathartic and informative to speak about some of the things I've experienced in my travels. Now, I feel like one of the first things I should explain is what I mean by deal with some problems. For lack of a better phrase, I kill bad shit. And yes, some of these bad things are completely supernatural in nature. At least that's how most people would see them. Cryptids, folklore, creatures that dwell in the night. I've ran into just about every single one of them that actually exists. And to be honest, they're kind of disappointing when you look at the immense amount of mystery and, well, spookiness that surrounds them. In reality, most of them are animals. Really fucking hard to kill and ravenous animals, but animals nonetheless. There is a definitive reason that these weird things don't stick around too long and are rarely spotted. Most of them are dead, and the ones that aren't are kind of afraid of us humans. If you wanted something to pat yourself on the back about, that could be it. With that being said, that's most. There are some that are as conniving and malicious as any human, even fewer more so. Oh yeah, I should probably mention that a lot, and I mean a lot, of the things I end up killing are just really fucked in the head humans. They're, for the most part, the worst things on the face of this godforsaken ball of dirt. I'm honestly kind of a vigilante with a side of monster hunter, I guess. Now, just because most of this shit are either humans or just really weird, fucked up animals, does not mean that there wasn't a giant skill curve to get where I'm at now. I have taken a lot of big hits in the 25 or so years that I've been slaving away at this prospect of mine. You know what? That's probably a good place to start. My first injury. So, surprise, surprise, I was only about 3 months into this when I got this injury, and the only reason it didn't happen day one is because the first few things I encountered were fucking anemic compared to what I faced there. I think I was in Missouri, some nowhere scuttle-fuck inbred town that had some wacky stuff in the area, according to the newspapers. It was the late 80s, I was fresh out of college and completely and utterly done with what most people considered a normal life. I was the same kind of snot-nosed teen I kind of hate now, in hindsight. But I digress. The information I had collected from the news was vague, to say the least. Pretty much all it covered was that not only were some dogs and cats turning up skinned on the porches of their owners, but now a girl had turned up the same way on the front porch of some poor fucking family. A 10-year-old girl. Like, Jesus Christ. She was skinned and gutted just like you would an animal you planned on eating. Shit was honestly not too great. What was almost not as great was the fact that I had nothing to go off of. No folklore I knew of at that time covered something that did this kind of shit to animals or people, but I knew I had to act fast. It was obviously getting a taste for people, fucking kids no less. I feel like all y'all will learn sooner or later that I have a soft spot for kids, and even those aforementioned snot-nosed teens. It tends to get me royally shafted usually, so that should be fun to talk about on a later post. Alright, back to this whole debacle. I had been in the town for about 2 days now, sleeping out of my car because the meager amount of cash I had swimming in my jeans was not nearly enough to eat and sleep in a bed. I chose eat, obviously. This shitty old cramped sedan of mine was no place to be cooped up in, especially since I had to put on my investigatory pants for a day and get to the bottom of this damn thing before another tot got turned into some prime rib. What preceded could only be described as luck. Some sort of Deus Machinae given to me by God or something, because I'm seriously not coming up with this for simplicity's sake. The morons behind it were literally talking about it in the Wendy's parking lot I was living in. They were literally talking about skinning another fucking child that night at like 9 at night in a fucking Wendy's parking lot. I can't make this up. The perpetrators looked as retarded as you expected them to be. Standard issue hillbilly morons from out in the woods somewhere, but I knew I had to play it safe. I know I could have very well just tipped off the police and these idiots would have cracked under pressure, but I was already kind of a criminal at this point, and I wanted to be a hero. I was 22, for Christ's sake. The grandiose gesture of saving a kid from some cousin fuckers from out in the boonies really pleased my ideals. I know it was stupid and put the girl in danger, but I decided to track them all the way to where they kidnapped the girl, even allowed them to kidnap her so I could track them to their hideout or whatever you want to call it. As I heard this poor girl struggle and groan against these guys, I kept telling myself I have to track them to this hideout in case they had someone else there. It was just to see if someone else was there. That is it. That thought process kept me going until I finally was able to finesse my way out.
No guns on them at the very least. I was in control here. Then I remembered that there was one more fucker here. The groans of the guy I gut shotted had masked him walking up, and I turned just in time for him to lunge at me and stab me right through the palm of my left hand with the biggest fucking Bowie knife I have ever seen in my entire life. I let out a scream the likes of which you haven't heard, and while I did, the other two very obviously scurried away with that poor child. At this point, I had had enough of this morons, and I was bleeding pretty bad and in need of some jury-rigged medical attention from the back of my Chrysler. I guess he didn't really think out his plan, as he seemed a little bit shocked when he felt 3 scorching hot slugs of metal tear through his soft bits. But I assume he got the picture by the time he slumped to the ground and let go of the knife that was still lodged in between 2 bones in the center of my hand. I put one more round into the crying man with a bullet in his gut, hit him square in the center of his forehead, and proceeded to tuck the pistol in my armpit so I could jerk this behemoth knife out of my hand. A plume of blood followed it out, but it was relieving to have the damn thing out of there. Didn't stop the pain, though. Oh yeah, disclaimer. It is not proper gun safety to shove a loaded pistol with the safety off under your armpit. Don't try this at home, kids. It was pretty easy to find the other two. One was hiding at the back corner of the house with a shovel in hand. I know he was waiting for me, but he decided to be good to mumble to himself out of fear so I could hear his ass from a mile away. I just took a good few steps away from the edge of the house, turned the corner, and popped him a few times before he could rush me and crack me in the head with it.
Alright, so my first little tales seem to do relatively well here. People seem to like it. Let's keep this going then, shall we? Just like last time, I feel like I should lay out some more information about me, what I do, how I do it, and the likes. Well, if you didn't read through my last post all the way, I'm Kane. I hunt bad shit, be it human or otherwise, and I travel across the majority of North America to do so. Yes, that means I have delved into both Canada and Mexico a few times to get some jobs done, and I'll tell you right now that it is annoying as all hell to smuggle a trunk full of firearms, stolen money, and other paraphernalia over the border of either of those countries. I have no clue how the cartels do it so often because it gives me a headache every fucking time. That reminds me, yeah, I do have a good amount of stolen money on me most of the time. Since this career of mine doesn't pay too well, as you would imagine, I have to steal money or get counterfeit bills or whatever to keep myself alive and well-armed. I've gotten so good at it that I don't have to choose between eating and sleeping in a bed anymore. Those were issues of the old days. I also have my fair share of allies across the country that allow me to crash at their house or apartment while I do my work, which helps an absolute load. I may tell you guys about them at some point or another, but not right now. Part deuce is not exactly the best time to lay out all of my trade secrets. I guess the other stuff to cover is that I'm in my 50s. Yes, I am an old fucker. I'm a Capricorn. I like long walks on the beach and wine tasting, and I am definitely single and ready to mingle, ladies. With that god-awful attempt at humor out of the way, let's set up this next story for y'all. Now, in all of my years of doing this, I have had some of the worst luck imaginable and vice versa. This story is not one that falls into the latter category, as I was smack dab in the middle of Montana in the middle of fucking December for this job. Thank God that this was over a decade into my career, so I actually had a place to sleep, though it was nearly a 6-hour drive from where all the buzz was coming from. As you would imagine, the age of the internet really helped me hone my craft. I was able to pick up this shit show on a conspiracy forum I lurked on to find cases. A lot of them were obvious bullshit, but this one was thankfully backed up with some bona fide newspaper articles and some missing persons reported in the area. Most people were spelling it out to be a bear, but the folks on this little forum I was sniffing around in thought it was some kind of hellbeast. It isn't, by the way. It is honestly more akin to a bear, but we'll get to that later. So, it had been about an hour since I took my Bronco off.
This crusty old fuck gave me its winning smile, and that row of blood-stained teeth shone like crimson beacons through that snow. I couldn't quite see them, but I knew that its beady little black eyes were connected with mine at this very moment. In less than a second, the thing was on all fours and hauling ass toward me with a murder boner the size of Manhattan. This was not the most ideal of situations, but it was time to get into business. Now, most people would run, but this thing can outrun you. It can also out-wrestle you, out-bite you, and every other thing you can think of other than out-think you. So instead, I took a crouching position, shouldered my rifle, and took aim. It took 3 shots of 30-06 to slow this thing to a halt, and thank God it stopped it. He was probably about 10 yards away from me by the time he ate snow. One more handful of seconds and I would have been in a lot more pieces than I'm comfortable with. I knew the damn thing was still alive, but the only movement coming from it now was the slow, weak rise and fall of its chest as its blood seeped out into the snow around it. I approached cautiously, and when I was about 3 yards away, I pulled my Ruger Super Red Hawk from its holster and put a .454 into its skull. Damn thing yelped and went stiff, and my job was done. I breathed a sigh of relief, said a quick prayer for the poor fuck laying dead beside his crumpled-up Jeep, and marched my back through the snow into my car. It was a long but peaceful drive back to the road. That was until I saw a very familiar Dodge Ram in my rear view. It didn't notice me, as it was pulling down the same trail as I had just exited from a little while before, but I knew it anywhere. It was the Devereaux brothers, a couple of less than welcoming fellow problem solvers that really do not like me. It's safe to say I sped up a little bit because I was not looking for a goner fist fight this afternoon. Not to mention I was more than happy to imagine the fucking saddened look on their faces when they found out that the beast they drove 3 days to gun down was already killed by someone they hate. And I mean someone, as there are a handful of others out there, and they want all of them, me especially. All right, I think that's the meat and potatoes of that story. I hope you all enjoyed it, and make sure to comment if you have any questions about me or what I do. If you want me to talk about any creatures that you know of, I'll be sure to do so if it is something I've actually hunted. Kane, signing out. Y'all have a good night.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. First things first, sorry for taking so long to get this new part of this little journal out. I found myself to be in a deep, dark, and long job that took a lot longer than expected, and I was finally able to wrap it up a couple of nights ago. I actually took my first set of R&R days afterwards, and now that my break is over, I can finally give y'all a new installment since you guys seem to enjoy these pretty good. Now, I might keep this one relatively short, but if y'all couldn't tell already, I do tend to get carried away in the details at times, so I don't know if I'll end up sticking with that. Without further ado, though, let's get into it. Just like with every other previous piece of this puzzle, I'm going to get it started with a bit more information about me and what I do, and any other lore that matters to the grand scheme of everything I'm trying to do here. Since today's story is about some of the faces I've met that also do this sort of thing, I guess I should tell you about that in general. Now, I am part of a rare breed, as far as I can tell, and we are by no means an organization by any stretch of the imagination. We all do our own thing in the areas we're comfortable in, and sometimes people overlap with one another. And that's how I found out that this was a lot bigger than I initially expected, and that I was by no means the pioneer I thought myself to be. From the Dakotas to Texas, the Carolinas to Washington, there are at least a dozen or so individuals or groups of problem solvers or hunters or whatever you want to call us. I don't really call myself anything. Some of them are nicer folks, people I can really get along with, and some of them, the Devereaux brothers being the best example, are not too terribly great. Be it because they're assholes themselves or because they don't agree with how another does things, there is bound to be conflict in such a loose group of people. Hell, I've had to fight some especially nasty fuckers more commonly than you'd really expect. We're on the same side, after all, right? A younger, more optimistic,
Maybe optimistic is a stretch of the imagination for any iteration of myself. Me might have said, yeah, of course we're on the same side. Reality of the situation is as bleak as anything else on God's green, and that's people do it for all kinds of reasons, and some of them are just as fucked up as the shit we hunt. I mean, I have heard everything from it being our
"What kind of dangerous game?" the guy to my left asked. His voice had more of a twang than the first. "Wild dogs, I think. What it looked like, at least. Sure it weren't one of them creatures?" "What? You heard me. You poking around for creatures?" Now, at this point, I had picked up on two things. The first fact was that these kids knew exactly what was out here, and the second was that they didn't seem very happy with the fact that I might know what was out here. Like, really, really not happy about it. Came to that conclusion when one of them brandished a revolver out of nowhere. Now, as you would expect, I was more than on edge when this kid pulled his pistol on me. I tried to play it cool. "Why'd you get that pistol out?" "Just answer our question, feller." "Mine first." Now, at this point, I picked up on the fact that the previously mentioned kid who brandished his piece at me was now starting to slowly but surely raise the damn thing in my direction. Now, please, don't ask me why these kids decided that I was to be shot. I don't quite know, and I don't think I want to know. I jumped right into action, though, snatching the Ithaca right back out of my still-open trunk and slam-firing that son of a bitch at them until the tube was empty. Of course, I took cover behind my car as I did so, but they plugged my trunk with a few rounds and put a nice hole in my back windshield. I took the kid who already had his pistol out first, burying the slugs I still had loaded right into his abdomen. The other rounds were flyers and did nothing but make the other two clamber around their truck to get into some semblance of cover. I discarded my shotgun and pulled my